Hi, and welcome to the Land Pioneers podcast, where we get to meet some of the most well-known and exciting land developers in the industry. So, listen to the gems and learn from their experience. And today's guest is Liz Ronson from 3L Alliance. Welcome, Liz.
Hi, Stan. Happy to be here, and thanks for having me today. It's quite exciting to be on this podcast. I've seen a lot of your podcasts in the past, and yeah, they've been very entertaining, and I've learnt a fair bit from them as well. Thanks.
That's brilliant. Look, I'm super excited to have Liz here today because she's built an extremely impressive career traveling from some of the largest publicly listed land development companies such as Mirvac and Pete onto where she's at now, which is the head of development at 3L Alliance. So Liz has spent about 30 years of building communities and shaping places right across Australia. She's absolutely instrumental in driving the company's vision to create not only a legacy about its developments, but also exceptional places to live. So, as I mentioned, her career includes key leadership roles at top property companies like Mirvac, Pete, Villawood, and Jinding Developments, where she served as managing director. So, Liz has led projects right across the country, from Victoria and Queensland, New South Wales, and WA, and she's brought profound knowledge and steady leadership to every stage of development, from strategic planning outcomes to delivering award-winning communities. So Liz is also often invited to share her experience at industry events, and she's served as a judge for UDIA awards in recent years. So, she's got quite a bit of varied experience, and I'm really excited to hear really in depth some of the lessons that she's learned along the way. So, but before we get to learning more about the journey, here's a little bit about the sponsors of the show. So we're Eagle Vision. We're the sponsors for the podcast, and with over 16 years of dedication to our craft, we've delivered nearly 720 projects, including approximately 40 land subdivisions. So what makes Eagle Vision unique? Less is more, 24/7, and commitment to extreme transparency. So less is more. We focus on strategy, not just pretty pictures, 24/7 round the clock. So our team is operating across multiple time zones to deliver effective and timely work, as we often have to work with completely unreasonable timeframes. Liz, I'm sure you're quite aware of some of the development challenges with those things. So yes. And ultimately, extreme transparency, so no surprises, and we've built systems and processes to involve our clients at every step of the way. So they get to see the machine's inner workings, and there's no sort of magic black box. And so experience the future today. Visit us at www.eaglevision.com.au and discover a world of possibilities. So now back to our guest. So Liz, I'd love to hear the beginning of the journey. You said that you've spent nearly 30 years in property. I find that hard to believe.
Thank you, Stan. I think it's 28, so rounding up, as you do from time to time. But I started pretty young, actually. I was at university actually studying accounting and finance, and I really love the finance side, but I found accounting pretty drab. And
right.
Accounting's so material, and I do a fair bit in my role as well. I'm not an accountant, but you're always looking at numbers and making sure it's correct, and it crosses into tax and all sorts of things, running the business side of it. But yeah, at the time it certainly wasn't my passion, so sort of fell into property. I started doing the property course for lack of what else to do. But in that, I found a great group of friends, and one of them, bit of a story, he was the president of the Property Undergraduates Business School, abbreviated as PUBS. He was retiring as he graduated, so I got to take up the chair of that, which is fantastic. But a really good social group. But that combined with some good grades I was getting gave me an opportunity to get into a cadet program at Pete Limited, which is fantastic. I think at the time they'd almost been trading for 100 years, so had so much built IP and nous there. And coming from WA, you drive through the suburbs, you're like, oh, that's a Pete suburb, and they're 50 years old and still standing the test of time. And so I was like, that was really exciting, and that was sort of my leg up. But Mirvac came along not too long into that, and I moved across to them, and I was there for about 10 years in WA. And this was when they were sort of putting their feet into WA. They were growing there. So I got to sit on some of their really big projects as they were coming out of the ground and under some really clever people as there are in Mirvac and grow my experience. I think what was really cool last night, actually, I was out to a women's event, a social event, a networking event, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
And I was chatting to the girl opposite me, and I said, "Oh, you know, where are you from?" She said, "Perth." And I'm like, "Whereabouts in Perth?" "I'm from Perth." And she's like, "Oh, I'm in Mindarie Keys." I was like, "No way." I said, I developed Mindarie Keys at
Oh,
Mirvac.
wow.
So I knew where she lived. I knew when she titled it a lot. I was responsible for titling her block, and she was talking about how she loves it to this day. So, yeah, it was just a great story and went to the core of why I love what I'm doing. But
Yep.
anyway, after that, went back to Pete. I am the repeat offender. I've been back a couple of times, and they take me back every time. But really good mob there. So I spent probably the most formative years of my career in big businesses like Pete, like Mirvac, where you learn good governance. You have the DNA in those businesses of what to do, what not to do. And particularly from Mirvac, you know, they're driven by quality and quality outcomes, and they are design led. They make it really work exceptionally well in a publicly listed environment where you do have those end of financial year pressures, but you know their regard to quality and good design makes them durable through those market cycles and end of financial year challenges. So I took away a lot from that. And then I think about, geez, I'm probably going to get timing a bit wrong, but about 6 years ago, after spending a bit of time with Pete in Queensland, decided it was time to move back to Melbourne. So I've gone Perth, Melbourne, Queensland, and I'm back to Melbourne. Love my life's here. And that's when I started in Jinding. And that was a big step for me in the fact is that the role wasn't too dissimilar, but it was going from a publicly listed environment where there's
Lots
systems.
of governance.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great. But that was just how my brain was wired. And
Right.
in that, it takes out some of the decision making, or the decision making's at different levels. Um, and sometimes you don't have the speed of decision making. So all of a sudden, I'm in a leadership role in Jinding, who's a very clever commercial group and has done very well in a short space of time. I think it was there, oh, I don't know, 1 year to 18 months of original trading. I've come along and to help grow the
Wow.
trading. At the time, I think they had about $2.2 billion worth of land development in their portfolio, and they were growing a team to deliver on that. So I quickly got to come in, build a team, you know, back myself, of course, report up risk, but there wasn't the same, you know, levels of decision making. It was me going straight to the board, getting the decision, coming back, and yeah, really backing myself. And I think that was one of the biggest learning curves I've had in my career and the most valuable points as well. So
Yeah.
in my time at Jinding, I quickly went from development director to managing director of that group, and was able, that's a development arm, I'll qualify, and I was able to grow the portfolio by about another $1 billion in value over the 4 years I was there, and grow the team. And yeah, I think after all that time, it was time for a bit of a career break, where I went into a bit of consulting, but I was a bit tired after 25 years of just plugging at it. And as we know, this can be a stressful role with deadlines and expectations and market cycles and other things that crop up. So yeah, went across, did some consulting, and after a bit of time landed with Resi Ventures. So again, a small to medium-sized developer, private, two guys, Kurum and Anthony. You've had Kurum on the show, actually. He's a
Yes. He
wonderful
was
man.
great.
Yeah. He's very well regarded. But yeah, spent some time with them, got my mojo back, and thought, well, it's time to get back into the full swing of it. So yeah, landed at 3L about 5 months ago, and this is me now. So I am the head of land development here. Not all development. 3L does apartments or high rise and mixed use and land. And it's great coming here, though, the opportunity here, and it's a good fit for my skill set is their Greenfields project, which is
Mm.
about 6,000 lots. We're in early planning phase at the moment, but in the fullness of time, it's going to be a fully integrated community.
Okay, so now you've gone from working at very high level corporate publicly listed companies such as Mirvac and Pete, then you've moved across to a company that maybe isn't quite as well known in the industry and privately held. What was it like to transition from one to the other?
Yeah, I think, look, the pros and the cons of it. There's like you mentioned, the challenge of brand. I found that with Mirvac and Pete, you go out recruiting, people know the name, they see the projects, it's got a great track record, it's been around for years. So all of that security and legacy and opportunity to grow is sort of, it's implicit. You don't have to convince
Yep.
candidates. And there's been plenty of candidates that have been in those businesses and speak highly of them. So going to a business which is not so well known, you certainly have to work harder to encourage candidates across. But then I think with that as well, there's also the positive. You can sell the opportunity of being part of something as you're growing it and shaping it, which I love. And I think the team that I eventually get involved in the new projects and part of the team, yeah, that they have that passion as well. I think in terms of the structure and decision making, you've got to learn to sort of fly out of the nest. If I can, I don't know how else to put it, but you've got to learn to back yourself. Like I've been doing what I've done for 20 years. I knew what I was doing. I just need to write the recommendation and get it done. I'm not going to have, the board or the levels asking me questions that is going to be asked of them to make sure it's all okay. I just need to back myself in and recommend it. So it's just a different way of thinking where you make sure you get it 100% right, get it done once, and then you get moving. And I think as well as that, you're in a public listed company, there's the board direction, then it comes down to state direction and team direction, and there's the layers of structure as to how you operate. That's not the way in a privately owned or family business. They might have something they really want to do and they just want to get it done quickly, and you've got to be adaptable and be ready to roll with the punches. But my role in doing that is advisory to understand the pitfalls, the opportunities, and sort of help navigate them through. So but I find that all exciting now. I don't think I could go back to another structure. You sort of learn how to work, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the agility and being able to make decisions really quickly. And once you want to get moving, I can feel that you've got that drive to really push things through. Waiting would be absolutely horrendous, I imagine,
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
all the different, levels of corporate governance to go through those decision processes.
I think the positive part, though, with my background, I can, work with 3L now to put the checkpoints in place at the right
Yeah.
levels that they need to be at. 3L already had a magnificent structure, a really good level of, I guess, adaptability, but commerciality and checks. But now that we're getting into growing a big project, I get to work on getting the right balance again. So, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, look, absolutely. And that's why Mirvac and Pete have been around for hundreds of years. Well, in the case of Pete, right? Because they've got those structures to navigate the market cycles when things aren't so rosy. So, yeah. So perhaps maybe we're at the point where you can talk about some of the challenges that you're having to deal with the market as it is at the moment.
Yes. Yeah. And look, I'm not alone in thinking that this is one of the most challenging markets there's been in a really, really, really long time. And it's not for the sake of lack of demand in the Victorian market, but it's also, planning policy, tax, challenges around infrastructure delivery that are all layering on top of each other. We're in the great position where our Greenfields project at 3L is a priority project to deliver housing for the next 10 years. And so there's a lot of motivation at all levels of government to get our the gazettal of our PSP completed and completed quickly.
Right.
And that's great, but with a project of this size, there's a lot of detail that goes into it. And I think a PSP, if it's doing its job right, or precinct structure plan, it sets a framework and it provides flexibility to fill in the gaps, because undoubtedly when you get into delivery, there's always issues that crop up that weren't anticipated, and we need to be able to flex and bend. Plus, the market's going to change, and the product's going to change, and legislation and policy is going to change. So you need that flexibility. I think with one of these, or being one of the priority PSPs at the moment, and not having a PSP approved for a while, up front, it's probably trying to do too much in terms of detail and is a bit overly prescriptive. And it's probably a bit prescriptive about product and where it goes. I guess glass half full, though, we have been working hand in glove with the Victorian Planning Authority, and
Great.
it's taken us as a developer to interrogate the next level of detail to work out why something works or doesn't, or if it can be done in a different way. But key is really all the government authorities coming together and working out what the priorities is like, and that's housing at the moment. As we know, we're in a housing crisis. So, it has to come top down, that captain's call about what's most important and how do we get there. Not everyone's going to get their ideal outcome, or the responsible authorities, might have lofty ambitions, but we have to sort of, create
compromise here and there. Yeah.
Absolutely. So for mine and my day-to-day and my lived experience, that's the key challenge at the moment. The market will come back. Like Perth has been trading off its head. That's starting to slow. We're usually counter-cyclical, and all roads are sort of leading to Rome with the interest rate cut. But,
Yep.
We'll see. I think there'll be growth, but in the back end, we need to have efficient and effective and quick delivery to market, because time is our enemy.
Yep. Always is. You're always working against the clock. Before we sort of started recording, you touched on the fact that 30% of the area of Greenfields is open space. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and why you've chosen to go down that path?
Oh, look, I think it's probably more than that. And
Wow.
this PSP at the moment is underperforming in terms of net developable area. There are big tranches for drainage, and you can't get away from drainage. We're downstream. We're going to have to account for it. But again, like I was saying before, there's probably ambitions of a few authorities which are resulting in more areas for infrastructure than is reasonably needed. So, but I guess going back to my Mirvac experience and what I've found in terms of my experience over my career, that open space is a good thing, and people like to live around parks. Surprise, surprise. I live in a leafy suburb myself, and I think it's really important. And I think particularly as we have climate crisis, global warming, extreme weather events, you want to take away paved areas and soften them up, in short. I think in terms of livability as well, you also want to provide every opportunity you can to get people out in the community, on the streets, meeting their neighbour, keeping an eye on their neighbour. It does take a village, and I think that has fallen away as,
Density and urban sprawl and all of those things.
100%. So I think whilst we are over providing open space, and we're working with VPA to get that back and get more NDA for viability and all the rest of it, I think a reasonable provision of open space is good, and we can really capitalise on this project and the opportunity for livability by making it a feature as well. We are trading right beside Woodley, which is I think one of Australia's most successful land subdivisions. It's a partnership with VIP and Mirvac, and they've done exceptionally well, and they've got a very green project. And if we can do that and
continue on that,
we'd be very happy. So they've set the bar high. We hope to jump over it soon enough.
Very exciting. Well, at least you've got a benchmark to work directly against, and knowing that that's been successful, it sort of helps it a little bit. Interesting. I wanted to switch gears up a little bit. So, for a lot of people in this industry, it's been for a very long time a very male-dominated industry. You're one of the sort of unique examples of being successful at it, navigating through to, the top of the pile, so to say, right? How did you do it? What were some of your lessons in getting through it?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I guess starting my career, it was the start of the noughties, and things are a little bit different there. And in WA, I reckon slightly more misogynistic than Melbourne. I'm sure things have changed now, but look, it's really male dominated, and I don't think anyone was deliberately being that way. It's just the way it was.
It's just what it was, yeah.
What it was. I was raised by my dad. He was a bit of a larrikin. There was always the guy telling the story at the party, and it's probably usually a filthy story or a dirty joke to get everyone engaged. So I sort of grew up in that environment where that was my norm. Even though I've pared back the language. So I guess going into property development, and there was that element to the environment, it really didn't ruffle my feathers. There were incidents along the way where you take a bit of a step back, but then, you boot up and keep rolling forward. I think that being a female in the industry and, being able to get to my career level, I found that regardless of, any profiling, the best way to get an outcome is to do your job well and to be consistent. There's a saying, I'm so old I refer to sayings now, but water always finds its level. And if you're doing something consistently and you're getting results, it can't be ignored. I will say, though, that it's incumbent on us, females or anyone, to, say, hey, I've done a good job. What's in store for me next?
Take credit for it, yeah.
My next growth opportunity. I actually did this and this is how I went about it. I think we could apply that there. The expression lean in, sure, but, not to be too humble and say, always it was a team effort. If you had a great idea, say, I'm really proud of that idea. Well, so what?
Yep.
And I think also just to be able to roll with the punches, whether it's male or female or anyone else, you're going to come across conflict. You're going to be in situations you don't like. I think you just have to hit those situations head on and keep your eye on the prize. Another guy I worked with at Pete, he said, play the ball, not the man. So, if you focus on what you want to do rather than the politics and everything else around it, sure, it comes into account. But, yeah, if you keep focused on what you're needing to do, you'd usually get there.
Yeah, almost like keeping your North Star, that saying of just being focused on your outcome. And ignoring some of the noise that happens along the way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So now we're sort of now starting to touch on this mental resilience topic. And before we started chatting, you mentioned that you got into triathlons, even half Ironman sort of events, which are pretty full on. So how did you get into them and why, and what have you, I guess, got out of it?
Well, you would know yourself when you're training for one at the moment. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, a lot of hours.
I think I got into it initially because I was a bit stressed at work, and I've always sort of been into fitness, but I found that it's a form of meditation doing sport.
Wow.
You can balance yourself out. You're focused on the one thing that you need to do, and particularly endurance sport, you do play mind games with yourself going, it's just one more kilometre, or it's just if I make this kilometre in this many minutes, it equals that at the end, and that's better than my last time, or maybe I should pace myself. And I find that sort of way of thinking and, I don't know, stopping your brain from thinking about all those other things by that focus has been really helpful. I also think that, having something that you care about as much as work or more, whether it be family, sport, meditation, whatever it is, it's important to find that separation between different uses. I think particularly in highly stressful situations, you can think it to death and lose your inspiration and ability to problem solve. So sometimes, an idea might come when you're out in the course, or you're just sort of percolating over stuff, and you find something on the horizon. So I think it's invaluable, and you've only got one body. It should be a temple, not an amusement park, right?
That's a great way to think about it. The problem solving is exactly what sort of happens on the course. And I feel that it's probably the safest environment to be doing those kind of problem solving things. It's not like if you make this decision in the real world, so to say, your multi-billion-dollar project may go way off target. you're only just focused on, all right, I've got to get the bike leg done, or I've got to get my run leg done, or the swim. How do I navigate this course? So it's a little bit more safe, perhaps.
That's right. Yeah. You can push yourself in a safe environment. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. All right. Look, another topic that I wanted to touch on is ecotourism. I remember chatting with you about your sort of passion ventures. Would you like to touch a little bit on that?
Yeah, I would. So I guess in my break after Ginding, I thought I'd drop back, do a bit of consulting. I've grown up on a rural property and I've always loved that. So after being, 20 years in the big smoke and being at your desk and going to site and coming back again and sometimes not seeing daylight, I just thought I had to earth myself a bit and get back to nature. We've been lucky enough to secure a really beautiful property in the Otways, which is a heritage environmental area in Victoria.
Wow.
And just amazing scenery
Like
and wildlife.
centuries old trees, right?
Oh, yeah. You couldn't even hug them, they're that big. So we bought a property which is pretty denuded from farming. And it's like steeply contoured, so there's landslip and weed and all that sort of thing. So we've been working on rehabilitating it. And we should, this week, our permit should drop to get our ecotourism 4 new cabins up and going. And that's off the back of my partner's project that he's done, which has had some international acclaim around sustainability. It was on grand design, so taking those learnings
Oh, wow.
into these ecopods. But at the same time, we're going to rehabilitate this property and do regenerative farming. So I do this a bit on the side. He's doing the bigger part of it. I'm probably more the business end. He's the construction creative end. And then in addition to that, we're starting a venture called Habitat for Holidays, where effectively every person that stays, including their dogs, because our existing accommodation is dog friendly, we plant a tree for them, a native tree into the area to rehabilitate.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's probably balances out. Like sometimes with your sites, you need to remove trees, and urban areas are just that. It's good to be able to give back a bit. And the Otways is about ecotourism, so all going to plan this Habitat for Holidays. We can hopefully roll out to our other accommodation providers and get some more contribution and grow it.
That's brilliant. All right. So, look, I think we've touched on a whole range of different topics. Is there any kind of main takeaway that you've got that you'd pass on to someone who's just starting into land development and wants to get going?
Oh, geez, there's so much. But I think someone that's wanting to get going and wanting to get ahead quickly, the devil's in the detail in what we do. I think you can, buy a block of land and try and get funding and try and do this, but really it's going to come down to the specifics in what we do. There's developments fraught with risk, and if you're not across all those risks and managing them from the very start, you'll come undone. Financiers see that. You lose credibility with authorities. Like, we need to know what we're doing. It can't just be grab a block of land, push it to your consultants, and hopefully you get the best outcome. I think as a development person, it's important to know numbers, to know the policy and framework, and to push the envelope as well. Going back to what I was saying before about, various authorities wanting what they want, you could roll on all those things, or you can just push and try and work the angles a bit to get the best outcome. And I think that's absolutely necessary now more than ever before.
Yep, brilliant. All right, look, it sounds like this is a great place to sort of wrap it up. Thank you so much for your time and being on our show. Again, just to remind for our viewers, if you've enjoyed the episode, please like and subscribe to it. And thanks again and have a fabulous day.